The FBI director was just sent a test, not a subpoena, not a hearing notice, a 10-question form, and he has until next week to sign it, under oath. You need to understand what that means, because no one in this position has ever been asked to do this before. This is the story of how it happened. It started with a video, not a classified document, not a whistleblower. A video shot on someone's phone in a locker room in Italy. February 2026. The United States men's hockey team had just won gold at the Winter Olympics. The celebration was loud, cameras were out, and standing in the middle of that locker room, chugging beer with the players, was Kash Patel, the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He was on a taxpayer-funded trip. He was leading an agency of 38,000 people, and the video went everywhere. Then something happened that should concern you more than the video itself. Everyone moved on. The clip trended, commentators weighed in, and within days the news cycle swallowed it whole. Washington returned to its usual rhythm, and most people assumed the story was finished. It wasn't even close to finished, because 6 weeks later, The Atlantic published a report, and this one didn't come from a single source or a rival politician. It came from more than 20 people, people who worked inside the FBI, people who had sat in the same rooms as Patel, attended the same meetings, watched the same man run the agency day after day. What they described was not a celebration in a locker room. What they described was a pattern: unexplained absences, episodes of drinking severe enough that colleagues said it was sometimes difficult to wake him up the next morning, profanity-laced outbursts in professional settings, a director who, according to the people closest to him, was not always present when the job demanded it. Think about what that job actually requires for a moment. The FBI director receives classified threat briefings every single day. He oversees counterterrorism operations, cybersecurity responses, and federal criminal investigations that span every corner of the country. He is one of the most security-sensitive positions in the United States government, and more than 20 people just told a national publication they were alarmed. Patel responded immediately. He denied everything. He stated publicly, clearly, on the record, that he had never been intoxicated on the job. He filed a $250 million defamation lawsuit against The Atlantic, calling the allegations false and fabricated. The White House backed him. A spokesperson said crime was at record lows, that Patel was a critical player, that the report was the work of anonymous sources and partisan actors. Congress did not accept any of it. On April 22, 2026, the same day The Atlantic published its report, Representative Jamie Raskin, the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, sent a letter, not to the press, not to the White House, directly to Kash Patel. And what was attached to that letter is the part most people missed entirely: a document. It is called the Audit, the Alcohol Use Disorders Identification Test. 10 questions, developed by the World Health Organization, considered the gold standard in clinical and national security settings for identifying hazardous drinking patterns. Used by employers, medical professionals, and government agencies worldwide, Congress was now demanding that the director of the FBI complete it, personally, accurately, and submit the results, along with a sworn statement attesting that every answer was true. That is the moment this story became something different, because this was no longer about a magazine article. This was an official congressional demand, backed by formal oversight authority, that the man running America's most powerful law enforcement agency prove, on the record, that he is fit to do the job. Has that ever happened before? No, not once in the history of the FBI. But the letter went even further. Raskin and the Democrats demanded 4 things in total: the completed audit form, the sworn statement, all of Patel's security clearance questionnaires, and all relevant internal communications connected to the investigation. Security clearance questionnaires. Let that sit for a second. Those documents go back years. They cover personal conduct, financial history, foreign contacts, and any behavior that could make a person susceptible to compromise or blackmail. They are among the most sensitive personal disclosures a government official ever makes. Most Americans have never seen one. Most Americans will never fill one out. But every person who has, every federal agent, every intelligence officer, every senior official who has gone through the clearance process knows exactly what those forms ask. They ask about drinking, specifically, by name, with follow-up questions about frequency, quantity, and whether the behavior has ever affected professional performance or judgment. If those answers exist somewhere, and they do because Patel filled out clearance forms before becoming director, they are now part of what Congress is demanding to see. Congress has now formally requested them, and buried in the letter was one more line, the line that changes the entire calculation. Raskin wrote that if Patel failed to meet the deadline, the committee would compel him to appear at a formal hearing, in person, under oath, to answer questions in front of the members directly. The director of the FBI, summoned to explain his drinking to Congress, under oath. Nothing like that exists in the historical record of this agency. Now step back and look at everything surrounding this moment. Because the alcohol report was not the first time Patel had drawn scrutiny, and it was not the first time questions were raised about his judgment. Earlier in his tenure, he used the FBI's private jet to fly to Scotland for a golf trip. He took multiple flights to a private hunting ranch in Texas. When his girlfriend, a country singer, began performing publicly, Patel assigned a full FBI SWAT team to serve as her personal security detail. Trained federal agents, carrying weapons, protecting a country singer. When a journalist reported on that arrangement, Patel reportedly directed FBI personnel to investigate the reporter. Each of those decisions generated coverage. None of them generated a congressional investigation with a formal deadline and a sworn document requirement. This one did, and here is why that difference matters. Because in his first year as director, Patel fired dozens of FBI agents. Not one or two, dozens. Career professionals with backgrounds in counterterrorism, organized crime, and cybersecurity. People whose institutional knowledge had been built over years, sometimes decades. People whose expertise existed nowhere else inside the government. When senators pressed him on this at the March 2026 Senate Intelligence Committee hearing, his first Capitol Hill appearance since the Olympic video, they asked directly whether those firings had weakened the agency, whether national security capabilities had been lost, whether the people walking out the door were taking irreplaceable knowledge with them. Patel said the FBI was stronger than it had ever been. Senators looked at the numbers and saw something different. And here is the detail that almost no coverage is connected. The agents Patel fired were not entry-level. Many of them had spent 15, 20, sometimes 25 years inside the Bureau. They had built relationships with foreign intelligence partners. They had developed sources that took years to cultivate. They knew the operational history of cases that spanned multiple administrations. When an agent with that kind of experience leaves, especially when they leave abruptly, without transition planning, under political pressure, that knowledge does not transfer. It walks out the door, and the people left behind have to rebuild from the beginning in a threat environment that has not paused to wait for them. The March hearing made clear that at least some senators understood this. The questions were pointed, the answers were not satisfying, and now a 10-question form is sitting somewhere waiting for his signature, along with a sworn statement, along with security clearance documents that cover years of personal and professional conduct. The deadline is approaching. If Patel responds, those documents enter the congressional record. They can be reviewed, referenced, and released. If he does not respond, the committee moves forward with a compelled appearance, and the questions get asked out loud, on camera, in front of the entire country. There is no version of this story where the document disappears. Here is the last thing to understand. Kash Patel has spent years in positions that required access to the most sensitive information the United States government holds. He has sat in rooms where the wrong word to the wrong person could compromise an operation, expose an asset, or endanger lives. He has been trusted repeatedly with secrets that most Americans will never know exist. The people who raised the alarm in the Atlantic understood that better than anyone. They were not outside critics. They were insiders. People who worked inside the same building, at the same level, under the same security clearances, and more than 20 of them decided that what they were seeing was serious enough to go on record. Congress agreed, formally, with a document, a deadline, and a sworn statement requirement. Kash Patel said he was never drunk on the job. That may be true, but Congress did not take his word for it. They sent him a test, and the answer, or the silence, is coming.